Yeah, I did the classic last week, not on your one, but on another couple of students that I've got. We did the full recording and I hadn't pressed record. Never mind.
Oh, no.
Such is life. Right, okay, let's get going on this. What we got there, Chris? Yeah, okay. Okay, there's no messages there. We've got 12 people, which isn't bad. Okay, just a few additional things tonight, not too much. Well, there's a few slides, but I don't particularly want to go into depth into many of these because of the complications of the subject. So anyway, we'll go in. Let's get going eventually. I'm just waiting for the PowerPoint to start to move. There we go. It's moved. Okay, we're in business now. Okay, so the module, as we know, just 2 questions, and you should be very familiar with the 2 areas, although there's such a big overlap. Question 1, the changing needs, and question 2, future challenges. Not a lot of difference. I've put, as you can see, 1.1 next to 2.2 there because of the similarity. 1.1 future function, what will it look like? And 2.2 is how will the boundaries change in the shape of the profession? Very similar. 1.2 is nice, future skills, but it does have the word leaders in there, so be careful about the leaders as well. And 2.1 is innovation and technology, which of course is really the theme, isn't it? Even though it's big data, it really is. 2.1 is about that, isn't it? And then 1.3 is an odd one, isn't it? Emerging business and markets. So that's fairly broad, and I've done some new slides on that, not too many. And 2.3 is the future challenges. So there is a big overlap between 1.3 and 2.3. If we look at the module, the possible questions, I'm not going to spend time on them. You've got those. Those were the 6 question areas that we pulled out last time we spoke. So they're on the presentation, and we'll come back to them. But you can see it is the learning outcome with the word big data thrown in, and that's all you're going to get asked. So question 1.1 is very similar to 2.2. So the questions are there, you're familiar with those. Just to point out though, there on 1.3, right at the bottom, it does talk about future risks and challenges. So there is a big overlap with 2.3, which is, again, challenges. If we look at 2.3 there, future challenges for the profession. But the challenges on 2.3 are very much focused on the profession itself, how it's going to change and what it's going to have to do. Whereas there's a subtle difference between future risks and challenges, could be anything, COVID, Brexit. So there's a subtle difference there, can you see, between 1.3 and 2.3. Not much, and they do tend to overlap. But just going back to these indicative content bullet points, if you're answering a question on future skills, you'll have all the stuff we've covered, but be clear that you need to know about functional skills, interpersonal skills, soft skills, technical skills, general skills. So you need a reasonably broad view of what skills are, not just throw the word skill in. Now that's more in my 45-page cram notes, that stuff, the generic stuff. So don't be scared to dig into the bullet points if you want extra content. So when you're planning your essay, you don't have to use all these bullets because it won't work. But if you're struggling or wanting some extra stuff, make sure you've linked into some of these bullet points for the question, and big data, of course. So that's the bullets, and you can see there For instance, on 2.2, it talks about interdisciplinary working and how the boundaries are stretching and blurring. So they're the type of words you need to be using in 2.2. That SIPs in their supply century, their seminal piece of research, say the boundaries are stretching and blurring. The profession needs to change. And can you see there, the talk at length about we need to be the advisors and guardians of the profession there in 2.2. So even though it looks a bit dumb, the content, it's still there and it's useful. So moving on, unless anyone's got questions, we said 1.1 and 2.2 are very similar, and that's about how the profession's going to change. And last time, the green slides, we did these last time, so I'm not going to spend any time particular on these. SIPs say look at talent management papers, such as Hayes, look at behavioural procurement guidance, and look at soft skills. Make sure you're familiar with that. So skills and expectations, one of the main documents is that SIPS Supply Century, which I'm going to come back on to later, and it's in the essential reading. This is the SIPS view in 2016, how it's going to change in the next 25 years. It really is a very good read, and it's well put together. So there's some summaries there. We did that, the Hayes Salary Survey 2019. We looked at the 2020 survey, and I would suggest if you come out the exam and haven't referred to the Hayes Survey 2020, you're in trouble, because they're going to expect somewhere to show that you're ready and you're up to date. So make sure you've looked at the Hayes Survey. There's only about 5 pages relevant for us. The rest of it's general recruitment rubbish. Key skills by job level, it's all in the Hayes Survey. And they talk, there's a big section in there about behavioural procurement and soft skills. So that really is a good read to make sure you're familiar with this requirement for soft skills. Why do we need soft skills? Because we aren't going to be doing the transactional day-to-day boring rubbish. It's all going to be automated allegedly, and we're going to have artificial intelligence giving us insights so we can be more strategic. So we need a different skill set. So don't just talk about purchasing, want this, want that. Make sure you link back to why, because it's going to affect what your day job is. It's going to affect who you deal with, where your boundaries are, etc. So always make sure you link in. They're the soft skills, the behavioural skills. Very straightforward. You've done them for years, 10 years. So I'm not going to go through these particularly, because you did the green ones we did last week. Okay, some new stuff, not too complicated. 1.3, which I feel is a very difficult area, is about the volatile environment, the wider influence of market identification and future risks and challenges. So if anyone was awake earlier or last week, what sort of things might you talk about in here? Who can give me anything? Who dare turn the mic on and shout or type up? Although I've lost the box for the conversation. Let me see if I can get conversation back. Chat. So
I was reading something about big data and the influence of new technology, and it was saying that because of the high costs of the new technology, it would cause a lot of work that's currently been outsourced to less developed countries to be brought back in-house or back into the country because of the technical skills that they haven't yet developed.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
In here.
Insourcing because of big data. Yeah, there's not going to be that money saving by going, we'll say, to India or somewhere, is it? It's if it's automated, it can be done in your own country. So yeah, implementing, I think, the technology, managing the data, keeping it safe are all a big problem, aren't they? Now, I think the key risks and challenge, yeah, you're right, that is one. So that's one you could put in. Anyone else get another one or two? What's on the news every night?
Possibly I was looking at Joe Biden and what he said recently about looking at the American supply chain, and given that they're really hell bent on disrupting the global supply system.
Yeah.
They're bringing it all in house. Even he is looking at doing something similar to
Yeah.
protect their own supply, not just Trump.
I think you're exactly right there. So, so the COVID stuff and the risk in supply chains, the trade wars, possibly with China, the Brexit stuff, are all that future risks and challenges. They all affect markets and supply chains. So if we look at a couple of articles here that I've pulled out, eventually when the computer decides to want to move. I'll click on it and hopefully, there we go, got something at last. Sorry, yeah, there was an article here in June, coronavirus still wreaking havoc on supply chains. And this word, the new normal, it's a good buzzword to throw in. Problems have been arising in production, meat packing, etc. Transit can be an issue. Many goods are typically shipped alongside cargo on commercial airlines, are being held up. So we've got this disruption. Items can get from A to B in short order, but not their normal schedules. And it's impacted many industries. And the WEF say production is 13% down in China. So there are problems there. You don't have to fact learn that, but it's pretty straightforward. There's one there, Supply Management, our own magazine, in June. Half of the firms may overhaul their entire procurement strategy in the case of a prolonged crisis. The results suggest the pandemic will accelerate initiatives around the world to increase resilience and new technologies, and back to the multi-sourcing instead of single from different regions. And I think it was Jack said, maybe more local supply chains, not just because of COVID, but maybe because of Brexit and trade wars. More investment in advanced technologies, including AI. So it might speed it up. Businesses are likely to redefine their relationships. Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. And that was a global survey with 400 procurement staff. And 44% were adapting transportation methods to ensure continuity of supply, and 40% were prioritising orders. So it's there. COVID, moving away from single production, low cost, to reduce risk. Production should be switched to smaller facilities around the world. Reshoring instead of offshoring, this magic word resilience. And the report, based on 91 US companies, had shown balancing production in core markets. Yeah, pretty straightforward. And we did that data last week, and the UK V-shaped recovery. So recession, supply chain disruption,
Sorry, can I add into that?
Yeah.
I was reading something today that it's not looking likely to be a V-shaped recovery anymore because the growth prediction's gone down.
I think I missed it today. I think there was something. My wife shouted, and I missed it.
Said that it's not going to be V-shape. It's going to be slightly looking more U-y, as it were.
So it's a bit more of a risk, isn't it? A bit more of a problem. It could be an opportunity. You could say that purchasers are in a strong position if they've got business to spend, money to source. They're going to get some good deals, hopefully. But whether the supplies will still be there and whether you're going to get more failures. So tariffs as well. China is not a happy country at the moment. We're likely to get slapped tariffs if we keep rattling them about Hong Kong. So if you're buying from China, be warned. So tariffs are there. And the key challenges from Hayes, which we looked at last week, were risk in the supply chain, changing EU procurement regs. Well, might not affect us. Managing costs. So be familiar with the Hayes stuff. Right. And that was just a very small bit on 1.3. I didn't want to get into the Titans and network scenario that SIPs talk about in their other article. It's very complex, that. So I've just pulled out a couple of reports here, and I only want to go through a few key things. So Oliver Wyman, 2017 report, suggests the key challenges with AI and analytics are problems with your data, quality of the data, uncategorized spend, and you need loads of dosh investment to get it all working. So they see that as major issues. Perhaps starting point KPMG, can you see this is a viewpoint not based on primary data? So what do I mean by that?
Is it an opinion rather than facts and figures?
Yeah, it is. It's their experts. Okay, I think it's not a newspaper article though, so I think it's still credible because they've got leading consultants and probably the pick of them, but it's still their viewpoint. But they're in the industry and so-called experts, but they haven't done any primary research for this. So the future of procurement, I've got the picture twice, is on data analytics. And they say the procurement in the future was previously disparate and fragmented data sources will be seamlessly integrated. So I quite like that diagram showing all the data coming into procurement, which will provide insights and analytics. And that would be useful for 2.2. We need augmented skills, and we'll need to engage in category strategies according to this. And that's your 1.1 and 2.2. Nothing new there, and it's be careful not to get overwhelmed. And again, procurement will be the resident data scientists delivering real-time insights, integration, descriptive to predictive, 1.1, 2.2 and 2.1. The unfortunate thing is, as I'm sure you've found, Jack, some of the stuff, it isn't definitely going to one of the slots. It sort of fits in between and you could use it in one or two areas.
Yeah, definitely. No,
it's
I agree.
Awkward. And we've got the challenges of the workforce to train them, to recruit them and keep them, which again we looked at last week. And that's for 2.1 and 2.3. And we probably need to move to a more agile operating model according to, let's get the KPMG one, it says Dave forgetting, sorry. KPMG, yes, they suggest procurement will become more agile. But will it? We'll look at that. We'll see. 2.1, the technology innovation is about using analytics, which we've spent a great deal of time on. The SIPS one, I don't think we looked at this the other week, is there's a very good handout on digitalisation in procurement and supply, and it's a 2019 publication based on a huge survey in 2018, I think, with 700, etc., etc. So it's got credibility. And what do they say? Well, they say big data is this, so we know what big data is. And that's for 2.2. They're the digital technologies, and you can see obviously big data's in there. There's some important stuff I didn't cover last week though. 62.7% have big data and 37.5% have it planned in the next 2 to 3 years. And at least 95% of firms have adapted one of the Industry 4 technologies. So scattered through tonight's session are some facts which you need to probably use somewhere. So the evidence of changes isn't just SIPS say, Fred says, Bill says, but if you can say 60% of firms have already spent on this, 30% are planning to, etc., etc., it gives you more evidence to back up the changes. So because you can show data that shows people are investing in this technology. So there's some numbers there, not difficult numbers. And what are the challenges of us going digital? Many. Lack of coordination, lack of urgency, costs, skills, you name it, can be a challenge. That's 1.2 and 2.3. More than 50% of firms that adapt digital can perform better than their competitors, so there's a compelling case for it. Right, solutions. JEP Smart. I don't know how you pronounce it. GEP, is it JEP? Does anyone know? GEP, JEP? GEP, I think. Many organisations have already rolled out cloud-based systems like SAP S4 HANA, which use analytics. There's SAP Analytics in the cloud, and they've got predictive analytics software. There's a dashboard from SAP, and they've got augmented analytics with SAP Analytics, data science for all equipped, conversational analytics, automatic machine learning, and predictive analytics. So there's a whole raft of people trying to flog your software out there and systems. You don't need to learn who they all are, but obviously if you're aware of what's out there, or can just cite an example, it could be useful. Deloitte did a survey in 2019. And what did they find? Skills are going to be important. We need training in analytics and data visualization. That's okay. How do we actually go digital? Well, you can see there 68% are improving automating processes, P2P, they're calling S2P. Supporting digital transformation, infusing. So there are a vast applications there. Implementation, I quite like this because this is showing how many people are actually doing it and plan to do it. How many people are putting S2P in, how many are doing contract management, how many are automating requisitioning. And you can see they're not at all black ones there. Are generally fairly low, although there's 24, 23 at the top. Most people are doing it or planning to do it, etc. Don't go and learn all those numbers. And they talk about the chief purchasing officers needing to automate workflows and put in advanced analytics and RPAs. And that's 2.3 challenges, upgrading the analytics. I've come back to this one. I did this last week because I think in your essay, it's going to be wrong to say procurement will do this, procurement will move to this, procurement will move to that. We don't actually know. And I think for big companies, it might happen. But where's the medium and small companies in this? And the SAP survey, can you see, says the future of procurement, one survey, two perspectives. And this survey even was done with many executives, and there was contradictory views on purchasing. Will it disappear, or will it maintain its current structure? And some said it will change and be absorbed into others. Some said it will be just cut because it's not strategic. So there are different viewpoints of where we're going to end up, and a lot will depend on the organisation you're in. And I don't think analytics are for everyone. There's a case for them, but which analytics depends on the company, how much analytics, and will procurement disappear? We might become contract managers maybe. So it isn't, make sure you give this contrasting view in your essay, not definitely this will happen because SIP says so, this will happen because Fred, it is likely to be more important. This would indicate, however, for some companies, it might not happen. So be cautious in your language. It's work in progress, dramatic changes. And the Accenture report, we're going back a little here, 2016. And you can see, I put the title in there because what does it say? Procurement's next frontier, the future will give rise to an organisation of one. Which doesn't necessarily mean procurement as one person. It means it'll be an integrated organisation with suppliers. And that was, again, research, good research, but 2016. New procurement will be strategic, be differentiated, embedded, smaller, central, supported by technology, which is pretty much what everyone's saying, isn't it? And there's some fancy diagrams there from the report. Ernst Young, in their 2025 Empowered by Analytics, talk about new skills. Leaders will have to do a better job. We must expect successful companies will implement technology, which they are doing. And then I've moved back to the APQC report that we looked at briefly, only for a second. And they talk about data enabled, and you can see technology professionals must be using. 75% of companies are currently undergoing digital transformation. So as a good fact, that one there in the second bullet is what I could remember to cite in an exam. Is it going to happen? Well, it's happening. And you can cite some data there about how they're doing it. Cloud, mobile, robotic, AI, ML, blockchain. Strictly blockchain, ML and all that aren't big data, but big data enables machine learning and AI because they need the data sets to analyze the trends. So it enables data analytics. So without big data, you can't have big data analytics, and then you won't need AI and you won't want ML. So it's all related, all related. We did the top trends: digitalization, cloud services, 1.3, 2.3, 2.2, obstacles, regulations, technology, communication, pretty straightforward. Trends, companies are looking to implement new technologies, 2/3 of them. Top priorities were to put in sourcing, new technologies and reducing supply costs. And then the big one, and I keep emphasizing the big one, Hayes Research. This was the blockbuster piece of research, 5,135 respondents. I think about 5,000 would do for the exam, don't learn the exact number. Or very large scale research. You can cop out the year's probably important and the fact it's large scale. And what do they say in here as well? In the forward cover, the guy saying, when I started procurement, there were 2 goals just to make sure we didn't run out and to get value across the supply chain, keep costs down. Now procurement must protect corporate reputation, create environment for investment opportunities, innovation, grow the business, beat the competition, implement digitalization and maintenance of sustainable supply chains. So it's changed. And they're the 6 challenges which we had earlier in the Hayes report. And the skills, it's all about these soft skills and it details them by percent. So you do need some meat in your essays, not necessarily the exact percents, but what the top skills were, why the soft skills are important, etc. One we didn't look at last week, and I couldn't decide where to put this. Talent management is a general issue. How do we retain talent? How do we grow talent? How do we find it? And some of the study guides, some of the reports talk about gaps, skill gaps. The ability to attract and develop remains a struggle. Who says so? The CPO survey 2017. We'll need to recruit people with new skills. Who says so? The Ernst Young report. We need talent development because it's a problem. Who says so? APQC. And then there's a bit more at the bottom from Deloitte about training and development. So T&D, talent development, recruitment, call it what you want. I think that's 2.3 and 1.2. And then, yeah, SIP Supply Century is in the recommended reading. And this was the 2016 report that they put out after in-depth interviews, discussions, etc., looking at the 20 years profession. So if we look at what does SIP say is going to happen in 20 years, well, in 2016, this is what they thought. And the newer reports have come out from Ernst Young and that 2019-18 seem to back a lot of this up. It's going to, emerging role and influence of technology will disrupt traditional procurement. The boundaries will stretch, change shape, become blurred. Good words for an essay. Those boundaries mean more professionals with non-traditional backgrounds undertaking procurement. And risk is very important, and innovation and role of procurement can play being the architects of innovation. So some super buzzwords there for an essay. And in this report, they talk about the need for transdisciplinary skills. We need to be trusted advisors and guardians. There'll be non-traditional people. We need to be more cross-collaborative, cross-functional, and we need to make sure we've got the right skills. And they talk about cross-skilling, so make sure you can write in your essay what cross-skilling is, and that's in the cram notes. And transdisciplinary skills, pretty self-evident. And the green slide means you had it last week, so I'm not going to spend on that. So what's made data analytics change the game? Better computers, better algorithms, and more data. Right, Callie and Lucy will recognise this. I've put this together. You might not like it. Drivers of big data. Technologies. Seems to repeat slightly there. Challenges. Technical challenges, skills challenges, organisational silos, and GDPR regulatory challenges. Big data analytics, visibility, dashboards, augmented new skills, real-time decision-making, insight-led decisions, job roles, more strategic, less numbers, digitisation. If I could have done a bigger one, I could get more on, but I've never been a big fan of these mapping diagrams, but actually, to save your sanity, it can work quite well. So if we went into the middle box, if I had more space there, give me some words you'd shout out with big data besides 3 V's and 5 V's. What sort of things would you write about about big data itself? I've got the 3 V's. What do we...
Structured, unstructured.
Yeah, definitely.
Semi-structured.
Yeah.
Internal, Internet of Things.
Yeah, internal, external. And then all the, IoT covers a lot, doesn't it? All the various new sources and probably data analytics even eventually. But yeah, so that's a slight summary. It's not perfect, but that sort of thing. Probably for each question you want a little map of things that you might discuss. And there's going to be some overlap because you can use some stuff in question 1, question 2. A couple of extra ones here I won't spend time on. There's a Vodafone procurement case study there of how Vodafone are using robotics, we'll say, to improve sourcing. They're calling it cognitive procurement, but it's using data analytics to automate purchasing. So there's a small case study there on Vodafone. I quite like this one. It gave you an example of how 3 types of analytics are used in an actual piece of research. And this was in Oliver Wyman. The description from the data was it'll take 5 random supplies to halt production. There's a 0.7 likelihood, predictive, and the prescriptive result of that, we need to inject 5% safety stock in 3 hubs so we don't run out. I quite like that as a plain English example of how to use analytics, identifying and reducing disruption. So that's how it helps us. It gives us insights, it gives us descriptions, it gives us predictions, and it gives us prescriptive recommendations. Right, gone fairly quick there because there's a lot of stuff there. Right, exam technique. I'll stop for a second there. Are you happy to do exam technique and then throw it open, or do you want to throw it open now?
No, it's all right to go through the technique, Dave, and then we'll have some questions.
Go for it, yeah, because it is a bit overfacing. Right, 2 questions, 2 hours, 50% pass mark. It's not 70%, it's 50. No bullet points or you get shot. No tables, write. Give examples, write in paragraphs, which in plain English is leave a line space. Examiners mark in paragraphs. I should know, I did it for 19 years for SIPs. That's why I've got square eyes. Relate to the theme. Don't just describe stuff and with no link. So pretty basic stuff there. Answer the question, watch out for link words. Discuss potential benefits and its supply base. Some answers only considered one and not the other. And I've marked one this week, and the answer was talk about stakeholder management and engagement. And they missed the engagement part of the question because there was a link word, an and. So be very careful in your question. If it says skills and something, make sure you talk about skills and the other thing. So make sure you answer the question. Obviously, you've all done the 5 things. If it says 5, do 5. Explain how social factors might impact on IKEA. Some candidates did a full steeple, but they didn't use the command word, and they provided bullet points, and it was a very generic. Now, the command words means they didn't explain. They probably just listed. Right. Okay, this is from the actual l6m4. Some candidates lacked focus on the command word. Some didn't give relevant examples. Some looked at efficiencies without justifying its association with, I've added that word, the theme, ethical supply chain management. So it's like you, if you just write about big data, skills, and don't link it to big data, you aren't answering the question. You're answering a question, what is big data, not how does big data impact skills? So be very careful you link in, even if it's very basic, like just putting a few words in front. And the command word means if it says evaluate, make sure you evaluate, which is pros and cons, make a judgment. Research could have been improved. Some answers were generic without referring to the theme. Some answers lacked application of examples to support their answers. Comments November's examiner's report. So that's pretty general, isn't it? Let me just go back there. Yeah, that's okay. So that's pretty straightforward. Right, so essay questions follow a set structure. Introduce, define, conclude. And I know most of you know this. Start with an introductory statement showing you understand the question. Define the key terms or concepts and context. Write 4 or 5 well-argued paragraphs. And well-argued doesn't mean being difficult. It means not writing descriptively. Making a separate point, backing up statements with evidence. Examples should be quoted and caretaken to show why they're relevant. Look at the so what test. Conclude your essay with a clear final paragraph. This can be finally, or in conclusion, in summary, overall. Bring it together. No new research in it, just summarise, bring together. Don't just summarise though, conclude. So don't say, in this essay, I've argued this, I've looked at that, and I've looked at this, thank you, bye. It's, I've looked at this, and I've looked at that, and the conclusion is this. So you're making a judgment call, you're coming to a conclusion. A useful phrase when evaluating could be to start off by saying, however, would also need to be considered because of, or the decision may depend on. So the future of procurement, you know, on one hand it might be this, on one hand it might be that. Overall, the evidence would suggest it's going to be this. Make a judgment call, but use indefinite words. Here's an examiner's comment, propose 5 measures. Although the comments from PD4, it applies to 5 and 6, all levels. Many candidates started by providing definitions of key terms in the question, such as an ethical behaviour in supply chains. Although this wasn't mandatory for a pass mark, at professional diploma, contexts are rewarded. You can give discretionary marks. The mark scheme might not always have it, saying good introduction, defined terms, but you're allowed to award marks for the quality of the structure and essay. So that's always key. It might not say define and explain, but make sure you do in your introductory paragraph. Right, how to write. Most of you have passed so many level 6, so you should know. Write the so what test. You're writing your essay, then think, so what? Sainsbury's have not invested in new IT infrastructure. Fact, description, not many marks at all. So what? This has led to increased costs and makes them uncompetitive in a market where customer satisfaction is key. Analysis. It has also resulted in more analysis. This is a problem illustrated by falling profits and market share. Evaluation. You're hitting the very high marks when you're doing them link words. So that's an easy way to write evaluatively, is do the so what test, link it. The other way you might want to do it is cause and consequence, by using words such as because, since, on account of, for that reason, the effect, therefore, consequently, accordingly, thus, as a result, is this. I know it sounds like paint by numbers, but it works very well. People who get low marks tend to write descriptively. They write a paragraph that describes something. They write another paragraph that describes something. There's no analysis, and there's no link between the paragraphs. So if you're talking about challenges, you might say one major challenge is this. Another major challenge, or related to this, or another area to consider. Try and link at the start. And most of the study guides have this sort of thing in. Do your introduction, do your main body, and in the conclusion, move from specific to general, restate the answer to the question, summarise the main points, include a final broad statement, never introduce new information. Eggs and suck, I know to lots of you, but that's very important. The command words, I think at level 6, I wouldn't really worry, but the one to watch out for is compare and contrast, or if they say suggest and justify. Most of the words are going to be evaluate, appraise, discuss. And if you look at appraise, guess what? It says evaluate something. If you look at discuss, look at it from different points of view. Evaluate, give reasons or account for something. On all of these, you've got to analyse and evaluate. They're not going to ask you to list. They're not going to ask you to describe. You're going to have to always really analyse and evaluate. But obviously, for 25 marks, you need to construct a good answer. Right, a lot of broad stuff there. I'm quite happy now if people want specifics there. Lot to take in. What do we think?
So just a quick question. You know when you say your conclusion, where you kind of wrap up what you've said, is it then fair to give an opinion of what you think? Or
okay. Sorry, speaking to it's a good question. At university, so I'm coming round to it. University, I would always say we don't want your opinion. We want you to base your conclusion based on your arguments. But you might say, from this one could draw a conclusion that this will happen or that will happen. But in fact, on these, you could say, I believe because of the problems discussed and this, that the future will mean that.
Okay.
Generally in academic writing, we don't do I'd and we's, but SIPs have never been brave enough to say it's academic writing because they want you to write as a practitioner, and a practitioner would be a bit more reflective in the writing. So I think you can say that as long as it's not emotive, Vicky, and it's based on your analysis.
Okay.
So so it's an okay way to finish, I think, on SIPs.
Thank you.
If you're at university, I would say not on a level 6 essay. So I don't know if that helps.
Thank you.
Another question I've just got is you've used a few examples where it says give 5 reasons, blah blah blah. Is that something that you think would likely happen with?
This because they could
5, or
they
is it just
discuss 5 challenges that procurement face, but from implementing big data. Or they might just say discuss the problems of implementing big data. So they might say 5 things, or they might just leave it open, and it's up to you whether to do 3 or 4 in less depth, or 3 or 4 in more depth, or maybe 5 or 6 in less depth.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I think there's probably less chance with the 2 questions. I think with 4 questions, you'd always get at least a couple where it said, give 5 or provide X. But on this one, 50-50.
Okay.
What do we think? Anyone else?
Could I just check? Pass mark's 50% for this, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Yes, yeah, it is. It's a very odd one, isn't it? So two questions, 2 hours, 50 marks. And the classic one is stop after an hour, isn't it? Even though you're writing for England and you've got you've learnt the question, I can write forever. People run out of time. You must stop. It's such a simple thing, isn't it? Stop at whatever time after an hour and start the other question. It really is important, that.
Okay, top.
Because I think it was the last lot of exams, I had a fairly experienced student run out of time, so it happens. So how are you tackling this? It's either whether to have a full mock answer or a skeleton of things you want to bring in, isn't it, to each question area? But you do need a basic knowledge of some of them reports. That's why I pulled out the separate reports on this presentation. I could have put them all into 1.12, but it gets very difficult. Sometimes you've just got to say, well, these 4 or 5 things are the bulk of what I'm going to refer to. I think I can put a decent answer together from them. But make sure you look at the SIP Supply Century one, the 30-page one in the core reading, and then it's take your pick from the reports. After Hayes, I think Hayes you must look at. But after that, it's optional, I think, what you look at. Maybe digitalisation and procurement from SIPs, that one, as the 3rd one. Because it is a bit overfacing, you can't possibly read all those. I know Jack's read them all, but it's hard work, isn't it?
Yeah, you can get lost in the reports. There's so many. And what I did for my group, and we had that learning outcome document for learning outcome 1 and learning outcome 2, and it showed all the individual subjects in there.
Yeah.
And what I did was I annotated that document by putting a brief overview of what each topic was, and then I also put in the reports and media articles that I thought was really relatable to those topics. So
yeah,
I think some of the other students on here, I'm not sure who your tutor is, but I shared it with Laura Scarf or Laura Taylor, whichever email you use. And I said to her that if she thinks it's useful, then I can share it with her as well. So if that's something that anybody else would like, then obviously I can get your email address and I can share that with you as well.
Thanks, Jack. That's great.
But no, I think it's been. I think again, it's been really useful. It's been good. It's been nice to see that linkage between the learning outcomes and the information as well, and the reports again. So again, it just really drives it home, and especially going over the exam techniques as well. It just gives the students a bit more structure and a bit of food for thought when it comes to the exam. So I think I think it's been really good again.
Good. Any more questions? And obviously you've got my email, or you can email through Jack. I'm sure Jack can send them all anyway, but don't be scared to shout if anyone's stuck. I will send the link to Chamber to put, so you can access it if you so wish, this one. What might be more useful is, thinking about it, is the actual presentation itself. Because it isn't much use as a video, is it, on YouTube, thinking about it. So email me if you want the copy of the presentation, but I'll send the link for the video to Chamber, and I'll send it direct to my students, Carly and people. Yeah, I think, no, I don't need to do that, do I? Come on, Dave, I'll put it in the Google Drive.
I was just going to ask if you're putting it in your Google Drive.
Yes, thank you. I got there eventually, didn't I? I thought, how did I do it with the other stuff, I'm thinking? It's been a long day. Yeah, I'll put it in the Google Drive. I've added a couple of reports, not many, just a couple to the standard reading. I think I did the digitalisation and one of the ones tonight. but they aren't hard to find on the internet once you've seen sight of the name.
We've just got to hope our exams aren't cancelled like the Leicester one.
Oh yeah.
Or Sheffield.
Oh, Sheffield's the same.
Is it?
Yeah, well, they only cancelled Sheffield because the venue had pulled a U-turn on allowing conferences and exams to go ahead. Yeah, I was on a call with SIPS the other day, and I was absolutely gobsmacked that for an organisation that talks every day about risks, how they only rely on one venue in one city. I just couldn't believe they didn't have a backup option.
Yeah. And they haven't even offered, I know at Leicester, students a chance to go elsewhere, which is pretty abysmal, isn't it?
Yeah.
People would have travelled 100 miles in the car on their own. That's not a problem, is it, to go and sit it somewhere else?
No. So, yeah, really frustrating.
They're shocking, aren't they?
Yeah.
But it beats sitting it in November. You get an attempt in now and get it out of the way.
Yeah, but I think these 2 webinars have been really useful, and I think the students will have benefited from it a lot. I know the feedback from my guys last week was really positive, and I imagine it will be again. There was a couple of my guys that had to miss tonight because of work commitments, but because it's recorded, you know, they appreciate that we've been able to record it and send it to them. So again, I think they will just find it really useful. So thanks for your time, Dave.
Yeah, thanks that. Yeah, and thanks for everyone with the questions.
Thanks, David.
Makes it a bit easier if we get a few questions. That's great. Are you still with us, Carly?
I'm still here.
Yeah, still here. You're pretending it's going on for hours, aren't you? So you don't have to go down.
Yeah, I'm just going to pretend you're still talking an hour later.
Yeah. That's my usual one. Our meeting went on ages when we were really in club. Right, I will see you all anon. Email any questions.
Thanks, Dave.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dave.
again.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.